Good morning, everybody. How are you today? Uh, I'm so grateful this morning for yet another opportunity to gather together. And I think I have got our flow. I think I've got it. So this morning, we're going to jump right into our reading because we have gotten a late start for the morning portion. I'll be back later today and we will get a little more into digging into this story. So this morning I just want to read and maybe give you some things to be thinking about throughout the day in the short version, and then we will gather again later on this afternoon for a longer a little bit of a more detailed look. But this morning we're just going to read. So I'm praying your safe travels for those of you that are commuting this morning, for those of you who may be just getting off work and getting home. I pray that you get some good restorative rest that allows you to, recover. But then we will, as I said, gather again later on today to get into some discussion about our scriptures for today. So let's get it popping. Let's get started with our reading part. And as I said, we will see each other later on today. Um, I believe probably evening commute time, drive time this afternoon when we can take a little more leisurely stroll through and look through because we've got our regular reading in Genesis 18. Then we've also got some additional scriptures to read to just kind of help with understanding the topic of intercession. And so today, Bereshit, Genesis 18, we're reading the second part of that story that we find here in Genesis 18. The first part was when the three messengers come to visit and they come to visit the area, and as they are passing by the dwelling place of Avinu our father Abraham, they are they are entreated to stop in, and therein, he has the encounter where, um, the promise of a son is reiterated, uh, set in motion. That according to the time of life, this time next year, that Sarah would have a child. We saw her laughter and how we talked about how she received that. But we're just gonna read this morning, so let's go. Genesis 18. And we're starting at verse 16, which was the last verse that we read in yesterday's portion. It says, "And the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And Yehovah, the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahweh to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he had spoken of him. And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, Rabab is that word there, and because their sin is very grievous. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord, and Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? So we're seeing the intercession here. Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein, that be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked that be far from thee? Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And so we see um, again what intercession is. It's intervening on behalf of another party. So Abraham is calling on the grace and the mercy, actually, the mercy of the Father. That, if you go in, I know you specifically, I know you're going to deal with this city, but what if there's a number of people that are righteous within that city? Will you not spare those that are righteous for those that are, for the sake of dealing with those that are wicked? And we'll talk about it a little bit later on this afternoon. But what if you're the reason that mercy is being shown in a situation? Yeah, that's why it's important for us to deal with how we walk through this earth, how we live this life, how we give ourselves over to the Father. But let's go. We're reading this morning, but just giving you something to think about throughout the day. And Avraham answered and said, "Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes." Now you see the difference there. 26, all caps. 27, lowercase. We'll talk about that this evening. "Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. And he spake unto him yet again and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. He said, I will not do it for 40's sake. And he said unto him, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, Behold now, take me out because of the lighting behind me. I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Oh, let Adonai, the Lord, be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And Yahuwah, the Lord, went his way as soon as he had left communing with Avraham, and Avraham returned unto his place. Now we're going to look at scriptures where we see intercession. In the passage that we just read, you don't see the word intercession, but what you do see is the activity of intercession, which is that reaching in and stepping in and intervening in situations for another. You see the actual word intercession in the Old Covenant, a Hebrew word called that is from the root that pagah, which means to confer with, or to intercede. It says 53:12, Isaiah 53:12, in the prophecy concerning Yeshua. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. Jeremiah 7:16 says, Therefore pray not thou for this people, neither lift up cry nor prayer for them, neither make intercession to me, for I will not hear thee. So again, we see that pagah, meeting with and making intercession on behalf of someone else. Jeremiah 27:18 says, But if they be prophets and the word of the Lord be with them, let them now make intercession to the Lord of hosts, that the vessels which are left in the house of the Lord and in the house of the king of Judah and at Jerusalem go not to Babylon. So we see them being entreated to make intercession, intervene in this situation. Nevertheless, Elnathan and Deliah and Gemariah had made intercession to the king that he would not burn the roll, but he would not hear them. But then over in Romans, we see the word intercession being used, talking about the role that Yeshua has been given authority to operate in. So we're seeing more of he became this for us. He was given authority to become this for us. And we'll look at that word a little bit later on. It says Romans 8:26, and these are also good to me. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us, which with groanings which cannot be uttered. And so the Spirit maketh intercession for us. And verse 28 says, And he that searcheth the hearts knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit, because he maketh intercession for the saints according to the will of Elohim. 8:34 says, Who is he that condemneth? It is Christ that died, yea, rather that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of Elohim, who also maketh intercession for us. Glory to the Most High for that. And then 11:2, using intercession, but referencing a story in Romans 11. And it was interesting here, for the sake of some of the things that we have going on our uh, in our world. Says Elohim hath not cast away his people, which he foreknew. What ye not what the scripture saith of Elias, how he maketh intercession to Elohim against Israel. Look, he made intercession to Elohim against Israel, because in that situation he was dealing with Jezebel, who had the prophets of the Lord slaughtered, and he's going to the Lord to tell on them, but the Lord reassures him that, look, there's a bunch of prophets over there you don't even know about. You're not out here by yourself. You're not the only one. There's a bunch that I have kept for myself. And so he's talking to the Lord. He's telling on them. So he's reaching in on behalf of another, but it's not the same. He's telling the Lord, look, hey, what you gonna do with her? She's become a grievous weight unto your people. What you gonna do with her? But we know that story, how that story played out. In Hebrews 7:25, we're getting back to Yeshua and his role of making intercession for us. It says, wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto Elohim by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. So Christ is not dead. He is alive, and he is working on our behalf. Now, the work for our salvation was done at the cross, but he, by the Spirit, maketh intercession on our behalf. So today in our reading, we saw some things. We continued the story of those three men that were on an assignment, and like I said, this morning we're just reading. This evening we'll be digging in. We saw the introduction of a city by the name of Sodom. It's from a root word meaning burnt or to scorch. We're seeing a city that in English we would call Gomorrah. There's a Hebrew word, which is Amorah, meaning burnt heap. So we see those names describing those places. We see Abraham's relationship with the Father. It positions him to be able to make intercession on behalf of others. I know I'm always intrigued when I see people who don't identify as believers. We talk about praying for others. It's like, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to about me? But anyway, Abraham's relationship with the Father and how it positions him to receive a message from the Father, but then also to have such weight to his relationship that he is able to intercede on behalf of the people in the city, and starts out at 50 and works his way down to 10, calling on the mercy of God, the loving kindness of God, calling on his mercy, that if you find 10 that are righteous, would you destroy those 10 righteous for the sake of those that are wicked? And the Father agrees. Look, if I find 10 righteous there, I won't destroy the city. But we do know ultimately, and we'll look at it in our next reading, our next chapters, that but those cities do ultimately end up being destroyed, which means, those that number that he was looking for, righteous, just simply was not there. And so, because the Father keeps his word. And so think about your striving for righteousness, your walk, your relationship with the Father could very well be the reason that, I hear people say, well, why doesn't the Lord come down and do? Well, when he comes down to deal with, we see cities like Sodom and Gomorrah. When he comes down to deal with the cry out from the earth of the sin, and when it talked about that sin being great, The word rabab there is talking about the numbers. The word that's used there means to multiply by a myriad. So there's an ever increasing amount of sin and so the cry of that city, the actions of that city have reached out to him. He's responding to what's happening there. Um, but then that intercession makes it possible that if there are righteous there. So that's why we pray for one another. That's why we set aside our own concerns in prayer and we pray for other people. Um, and so again, we look at intercession again, the action of intervening on behalf of another. And when we dig in a little bit later on, we're going to go back through those scriptures there in the Old Testament and the New. Paga, to encounter, meet, reach, entreat, make intercession. And then intercano in the Greek for those New Covenant scriptures that talk about, Yeshua conferring with the Father, by extension, entreating the Father on our behalf as believers. And so tomorrow's reading will be Genesis 19, where Elohim rescues Lot. But we're going to be done for today with our reading. And I want to encourage you to join in with us later on today. Because that took me completely off because of the way sunlight is hitting now. I encourage you to join with us this afternoon as we go a little further, looking at the story of Abraham's intercession, and then also taking some time to slow walk through a little slower through those scriptures that discuss, intercession and Yeshua making intercession for us. We'll talk about those again later on today, but as you're going through your day, preparing for your morning, be mindful of how your pursuit of righteousness, your right standing with the Father, the impact that has on the world around you. When you hear people talking about, well, why doesn't God stop such and such? If His holiness enters into our wretchedness, we're not ready for that. And so we are grateful for His mercy that He has not yet entered into the earth to deal with sin. But what He did do was provide a way for us to be forgiven of sin through Yeshua. And so be grateful for your relationship with Christ. It's the very reason that we are still alive. That's why we say it is in Him that we live, move, and have our being. Because without that, the sin of this world would end up in judgment. And so there is a time coming. And that's again is why we're grateful for Yeshua, because we're saved from that wrath through Him, through the work done by His blood, through the work that He did for us on the cross. And so we are grateful for that. So as you're going through your day, be mindful of that. As you're going through today, interceding, praying for someone else. Surely you know someone that needs prayer and deserves for you to take a moment away from your own needs. Yes, you got bills. Yes, you got situations. Yeah, you got areas where you need the Father to intervene on your behalf. But if you think about people who need intercession in the way that Abraham did, was he knows there's a city that's about to be devastated, a city that's about to be destroyed. And he doesn't rejoice at what's happening or what's promised to happen to those people. So I think it says a lot about the heart. People who can rejoice over the destruction of others. I know I'll share a story this afternoon that I was baffled by the response of some people, and that was some years ago, early in my return to church and rededication of my life to the kingdom. I was devastated in my emotions, not in my life, but I was wrecked in my emotions by some things, that the ways that I saw believers responding to people who we knew were outside of the faith being killed. Our hearts should be broken for those who die without the Lord, because we know this life, you get one shot at it. It's appointed unto every man to die. You got one time that you're gonna die. You're gonna leave this physical realm. And once you're done, you're done. I don't ascribe to things like purgatory and that kind of thing. Once you're done, you're done. You're awaiting judgment for things done in the body. So that is why we don't rejoice in the loss of life of others. I know that some, do not understand, war and, the warrior, ethos and that kind of thing. I get that part. But when you've identified someone as your enemy, rejoicing over what has happened to them. But then I also know the heart of our Father, which is that none should perish outside of the right return in relationship to Him. It's for this sake that we have the scriptures that say, "For God so loved the world, Elohim so loved uh, the world, His orderly arrangement. He so loved that for that reason He sent His Son into the earth to die for us." And it's not that He's sending people um, to judgment and damnation. That's a choice that is being made. That's a decision. There's a decision being made that causes that to happen. But we'll dig into that a little further as we go. Hopefully, prayerfully, you'll be with us later on in the day. So I pray that you have a wonderful start to your day, that you're able to finish the things that you start, that you are able to be productive in your personal life and for the kingdom. And if the Father will, with Yeshua's help, we will see you later on today.